Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're doing well. When it comes to spirituality, the religion of Islam is filled with academia, with books written by various scholars throughout the generations, stemming from, of course, Quran and Sunnah, is packed to the brim with aspects of character development, spiritual reality, understanding our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how to develop as an individual, how to ensure all aspects of our relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with ourselves, with our family members, with our associates, etc., are all done in light of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's no dearth of information in that regard in the religion of Islam. The field of Islamic spirituality can be called ilm al-ihsan, the science of ihsan, or tazkiyatun nafs, purification of the soul, or tahdhibun nafs, sophistication and development of the soul, or even ilm al-tasawwuf as it was traditionally known in the past. I want to share some books inshallah with you regarding this science, regarding character development, regarding spirituality in Islam, inshallah tabaraka wa ta'ala. The first book I want to share with you is the book of Imam Hujjatul Islam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, a very great scholar in all of the major fields of Islam, in fiqh, in aqidah, as well as ihsan. This is said to be the last book that Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah has written, called Minhāj al Ābidīn ila Jannati Rabbil Alameen. The book is, in my opinion, amazing, absolutely amazing. I know I say that for many books, but almost everything that Imam al-Ghazali touches, whenever he puts the pen down, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put some beauty in this individual's writing. MashaAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate his ranks in the hereafter. So this book actually follows a concept in ilm al-tasawwuf called the maqamat, or the different stages of character development, starting from gaining knowledge, then repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then abstaining from the delights and the pleasures and luxuries of the dunya, etc., etc. And he talks about all of this in the muqaddimah, in the introduction. I've actually done a program highlighting this beautiful introduction of Imam al-Ghazali. I'll put a link to that inshallah. You can check it out and understand what the maqamat are, the stages of character development. So he talks about that in the beginning of the book, and then all the other chapters of the book is going to be each level that the individual develops in. So absolutely amazing book, not even that big. It can be considered the summary of the spiritual thought of Imam al-Ghazali. Everyone knows about Ihya Ulumuddin, revival of the religious sciences of Imam al-Ghazali, his magnum opus in Islamic spirituality. This can be seen as, him writing it after Ihya Ulumuddin. It's not a summary of Ihya Ulumuddin. That would be Al-Arba'in fi Usul al-Din, which I also did a book review for. Inshallah, I'll link that. So it's a summary of Ihya Ulumuddin, but this is different. This is extremely practical, I would say. It's not very theoretical, but extremely practical, showing an individual how they can develop from one stage to the next in terms of Islamic spirituality. Next, I have two books written by the same author, a contemporary author, Sa'di bin Hamoud al-Thammari. I hope I am pronouncing his name correctly. Al-Thammari, Sa'di bin Hamoud. So he has written two books, and from what I can tell, the individual is probably of the Salafi orientation, but they're writing in the field of akhlaq, character development, etc. So in my understanding, this would be ilm al-tasawwuf as well. Tazkiyat, tasawwuf, akhlaq. So this person is writing in that regard, and it has that aspect to it. So if there's an individual who is wary of ilm al-tasawwuf because of certain connotations attached to the science, these two books would be ideal for that individual, inshallah. The first book here is Manhaj al-Salaf fi Tazkiyat al-Nufūs. Manhaj al-Salaf fi Tazkiyat al-Nufūs. So the translation of the title is the methodology of the Salaf, the first few generations of Muslims, in regard to purifying the self, purifying the desires of the lower self. So what this book talks about, this first one here, it discusses how the Salaf would go about purifying themselves, how to put Quran into practice, what actions would they do, fasting, tahajjud, uh, charity, etc., all of those kind of things. There's statements in that regard. And then he extensively quotes Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, and at sometimes he will quote Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahumullah ta'ala, and he quotes many of the Salaf. So just, flip into this page. I have a quotation of Al-Hasan al-Basri, of Imam Abu Hanifa, of various scholars, Ibn al-Jawzi, and then he says, قال شيخ الإسلام يعني, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. So really nice book in terms of presentation, in terms of information as well. So this is going to be talking about specifically what the Salaf would do. The second book written by the same author, Sa'di bin Hamoud al-Thammari, is Makārim al-Akhlāq fi ضوء الكتاب والسنة. Character, good character in light of Quran and Sunnah. So the same author and the same methodology, but here the focus is not on the methodology of the Salaf, but he's talking about character traits. And what is said about them in the Quran, the Sunnah, how different aspects of inculcating, etc. But it's a little bit different than the other one. This one is more theoretical. The other one is going to be aspects how the Salaf themselves would practice upon all these. The third book, and I did not, though that was the third book. The fourth book, I have 6 books here total. I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. A Handbook of Spiritual Medicine, written by Ibn Dawood. Now, this book, inshallah, I want to speak in more detail in regards. So I will, inshallah, have a separate book review, I should say. It's really awesome. I mean, it's good for any and every Muslim, inshallah ta'ala. So what the author does is he goes through works of Imam al-Ghazali and other scholars of Islamic spirituality, and he takes out the summary of all of what they're talking about. He breaks up chapters into spiritual maladies and spiritual traits that we should strive for, and in a very, very beautiful manner. High quality. I mean, the book doesn't look so large, but it's extremely heavy because it's all glossy paper. And I'm going to show you very soon how amazing this book is. For instance, he has the chapter of at-tafakhur, boasting, arrogance, and pride. He starts off with a chart, and the whole thing is colored, and various colors as well. Starts off with a chart talking about signs and symptoms of arrogance, pride, boasting. Then he goes into treatments. And then he goes even to exceptions of the rules that he's mentioning. So he will have, in a very organized manner, charts, etc., where on the left side he'll have signs and symptoms. Then he'll have the Quranic or prophetic evidence. So, ayat and hadith and sourcing the ahadith from Bukhari, Muslim, etc., authentic sources, statements of pious individuals, Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, mainly, and others as well. So this is a really amazing book if you're interested in the Islamic understanding of character development. Every chapter has, a different kind of theme, we could say, a different color code. And this really warrants a separate, inshallah, book review. So I will, inshallah, if Allah gives tawfiq, do that. But I highly recommend this. This can be read in masajid as a class. Everyone purchase the book and, a scholar go over the material, add some more into it. Or it can be used as a reference, so people read it, the scholar summarizes, etc. Or anyone who is doing Islamic programs, they can model their programs of Islamic spirituality based off of this book. Highly, highly recommended. Now, 2 more books, inshallah. Please bear with me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you ajr, thawab, reward if you made it so far, inshallah. The next book is more, I have 2 books written by shuyukh of a tariqah. Now, this is not the time where I'm going to talk about these different schools in ilm al-tasawwuf, but if anyone's going to criticize, please read these books and see where is the contradiction to Quran and Sunnah. The first book is an anthology of the teachings of Hakim al-Ummah, Mawlana Ashraf Ali Thanawi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Very, very great scholar who has written almost 1,000 books in Urdu, in Arabic, I believe also in Farsi, and many of them have been translated into English. A great teacher, a great sage of the recent era. Rahimahullah, he's passed away. His disciple, his very close student, Sheikh Maulana Masihullah Khan, who was the teacher of one of my teachers, right? My teacher of Abu Dawood was Bay'a. He was the disciple of Sheikh Masihullah Khan, rahimahullah ta'ala, who is the disciple of Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi. So this book here, The Path to Perfection, Sheikh Masihullah Khan, he collected the sayings, different works of Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi, and he organized it in a very beautiful manner and collected all of that into this. So this book is the teachings of Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi. It's not the direct book of Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi. Inshallah, in another video, I can go over that. Absolute amazing scholar, in my opinion. And I think the majority of people. There are some people who are probably going to comment below who don't really like Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi. For whatever reason, their sheikh doesn't like him, etc. But at the end of the day, please judge the individual on the content of their material. If you want to criticize this book, read the book, inshallah, check it out, and you will see it is filled with gems, absolute gems of character development. He breaks down in a very simple form character development in he has negative traits, one simple cure. He highlights what the negative trait is, he defines what it is, he talks about how you can tell if it's inside you or not, and then he gives you one simple cure. So it's not meant to be exhaustive in any way, but it's to give you an intro. He also talks about the relationship of a disciple and a teacher, meaning this whole concept of an individual taking a pledge with a sheikh and engaging in a mentor protege relationship for the sake of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the sheikh will monitor the progress of the individual. The individual will talk about his spiritual maladies to the sheikh. I have greed, I have love of the world. What do I do? How do I get it out of me? The sheikh will then say, okay, do this, do this, do this, etc., like a loving brother or even a father figure. And then he talks about some intricacies of the path of tasawwuf. So this is extremely beautiful. I recently did a program on tasawwuf and I heavily relied on this book. I actually summarized the entire book and I added some more information from another book of Sheikh Ashraf Ali Thanwi, which I'm not going to talk about at the moment. The second book is also written by a Sheikh al-Tariqah. I'm not fully aware which tariqah. I believe Sheikh Abdul Qadir Isa, who is the author of the book, he belongs to the Shadhili tariqah, the Shadhili understanding of Islamic spirituality. I have the book in Arabic. I'm only sharing the English one because, many of you would be reading it in English. Haqa'iq Ani Tasawwuf is the book in Arabic. I have it, in the back over there. This is the English one, Realities of Sufism. Sufism, Tasawwuf, right? Now, the reason why I'm very sensitive or vigilant in this regarding using the word tasawwuf is because in recent times it's been marred, it's been described as something that it isn't. And a lot of people see a certain action being done by people who are ascribed to tasawwuf, and then they make a judgment regarding the entire field, which I think is not academically correct. So Shaykh Abdul Qadir Isa rahimahullah, very prominent shaykh of the Shadili Tariqah, I believe. Interestingly, the forward, and many of you know, Sheikh Muhammad bin Yahya al-Ninawi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, a great scholar who is in our midst, and imam and leader in our locality as well. He wrote the forward. And this has been beautifully translated. He has a few sections. I'm just going to briefly go over that, and inshallah, the video will be terminated there. In the part one, I believe he has 4 parts. Part one, defining Sufism or Tasawwuf. What is Tasawwuf? What's the definition? Where does this word come from? What is it all about? Part two, the practical methods of tasawwuf. Like, if a person wants to understand what tasawwuf is all about, what are the means that they use to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And you'll see this is Quran and Sunnah just in a formulated way where we can easily put into practice based off of the school. Part 3, and then for each section he quotes Quran, Sunnah, and great scholars of Islam, and he goes into in depth regarding all of this. It's about 400 pages, and it's quite thick actually, as you can see. Then he goes to part 3, the path to Allah, where he talks about the maqamat. So he talks about truthfulness, sidq, ikhlas, sincerity, sabr, patience, zuhud, renouncing the world, wara', taqwa, piety, being satisfied with Allah instead of the dunya, tawakkul, trust in Allah, shukr, gratitude in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In each section, he defines it, he gives quotations, he talks about how to have the trade. So this would be a little bit more in-depth than the path to perfection. The path to perfection, I would say, if you're trying to get a good understanding of what to expect in ilm tasawwuf, like the actual practical schools, start with the path to perfection. And then if you're looking for something more, Realities of Sufism is an excellent book. Part 4, the fruits of tasawwuf. So he talks about when a person treads the path of tasawwuf, what happens? They get love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They get inspirations. They get dreams that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them. And then he has a part 5, correcting mistaken notions regarding tasawwuf, which is very important in our times. Different objections, answers to those objections, what tasawwuf is, what tasawwuf is not. And he goes in depth regarding that. And then he talks about his Shaykh, Shaykh Muhammad al-Hashimi, rahimahullah ta'ala. So over 400 pages in this regard. Yes, and of course, he is Shadhili. I'm seeing it here. The chain of the Shadhili order is all the way at the end. So these are a few books, inshallah, for an individual who's looking into character development. I know there's an overlap here. Some of these books focus strictly on character development, such as the first 3, or first 4, I should say. Imam al-Ghazali's book, that's strictly character development. He's not going outside of Quran and Sunnah. None of these books are. And that is my opinion. None of these books are going out of Quran and Sunnah. Yes, they're developing methodologies. They're saying, okay, if you do this, inshallah, arrogance will be taken out of your heart. But that is the taking out arrogance from the heart is Quran and Sunnah. So Imam al-Ghazali's book, the 2 books I believe by the Salafi author, who did a good job in my opinion, and Ibn Dawood, his book, which is called Spiritual Medicine. In fact, let me just show you all of the books. So you got Minhāj al Ābidīn ila Jannati Rabbil Alameen of Imam al-Ghazali. This has been translated. There's a available translation and one that's not available. Unfortunately, the available one, I dislike the translation. It's a brown cover. It's been, I think, translated by someone from India. It's not fluid. There's aspects to it. I don't want to speak bad about it, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the translator. There's another version of the translation which I cannot find. I would have purchased it if I had access to it. I'll link it. It's sold out, so if it does ever come back into stock, inshallah, you can check it out then. These 2 books, right? So it's like the same author kind of writing on the same topic, which I think it's nice, for someone who's strictly looking at Quran, Sunnah, and it doesn't want to do much more. Although I would say he is quoting Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, who are in the 700s. Imam al-Ghazali is in the 500s, right? So it's just a person's inclination. So if a person inclines towards Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, then the doors of tasawwuf are not closed for anyone. Spiritual medicine, really, really good in terms of like charts, looking at everything. The only thing this will lack is like a conversational style of writing. It's just charts, etc. So these 4 is going to be strictly character development in Islam. I know the first 3 are in Arabic. I don't believe these 2 are translated. Minhāj al Ābidīn of al-Ghazali is translated. This is in English. So these are excellent works in my opinion for character development. And the last 2, both in English, are in regard to written by sheikhs experts, mentors in the field of tasawwuf. This sheikh is a Chishti sheikh. This sheikh is a Shadili sheikh. These are names of schools in the field of character development, meaning, they have their own ways of how to remove these spiritual diseases, how to inculcate pious aspects in the heart, how to do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different ways. Some like to do dhikr a certain amount of time, others recommend a different amount of time, etc., etc. These two, if you're trying to really get into ilm tasawwuf and understand tasawwuf better, especially in modern times, I would recommend those last two. So these are a few books, inshallah. If you're trying to learn a little bit more about tasawwuf, inshallah, it would be beneficial. If this was of benefit, please subscribe if you haven't. Like the video. Please leave a comment below. I'll try my best to respond to your comment. Jazakumullahu khairan. وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.